lives today. In these webinars, we'll be talking honestly about issues relating to teaching, learning, leading, and living in the time of the coronavirus. We hope these conversations and your questions will generate really valuable ideas and help us navigate this complex education and parenting landscape together. You can submit questions throughout the conversation using the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. In this episode, I am thrilled to welcome Richard Carranza, Chancellor of the New York City Department of Education, the largest school system in the nation. Chancellor Carranza is responsible for educating 1.1 million students in over 1,800 schools. During his nearly 30 years in education, he has served in virtually every role. Prior to New York City, he was the superintendent of the Houston Independent School District, the largest school district in Texas and the 7th largest in the United States. Deputy superintendent and then a superintendent of the San Francisco Unified School District, where I met him, and Northwest Region superintendent for the Clark County School District in Las Vegas. He began his career as a high school bilingual social studies and music teacher, and then as a principal, both in Tucson, Arizona. Dr. Carranza is also past chairman of the board of directors for the Council of the Great City Schools, where he served as a national spokesperson on significant issues facing urban school districts. We are truly fortunate to have him here today to talk about how the nation's largest public school system is preparing for the unknowns of fall 2020. I am sure districts everywhere will learn from his extensive experience. Please join me in welcoming Chancellor Carranza.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Jewell-Sherman. It's an honor to be here with you, and it's great to see you. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
As am I. Let's get to it. As a leader of long and impressive standing, you know how important it is to focus on your own health and well-being so that you can lead effectively for positive impact. How have you, your fellow educators, and families weathered the spring? What are some of the things that they've done or that you'd recommend people do to keep a positive mindset and disposition in spite of the challenges?
Well, I think, the issues of academic advancement, the issues of content knowledge notwithstanding, I think one of the greatest challenges that we've all had is the social emotional learning needs, and quite frankly, addressing the trauma that everyone, both students, their families, our teachers, our principals, everyone has endured with this pandemic. So what we've tried to do is embed within all of our curricular offerings. We transitioned to remote learning on March 16th. So we closed our school buildings, but learning continued. But we realized that we had to embed in those academic resources also a rich, robust vocabulary or library of social emotional learning supports, trauma-informed curriculum, not only for teachers in working with their students, but also for parents who are now thrust into the very difficult situation of being at-home teachers. So, and then making that even a little more challenging was, we speak over 150 languages in our families in New York City, but we support 10 languages. So all of that, to translate it and make it understandable in those languages, was also a big effort for us as well. We also partnered with the PBS station here for our youngest learners. So every day at 11 o'clock, there is a 30-minute program that our teachers are recording, where it's a number of activities for our pre-K, kindergarten, first and second graders that are fun activities, movement activities. Our PE teachers have also engaged in creating these webinars where whole classes and whole schools of students can log on and do exercises in the comfort of their own small apartment with their teacher online. And then again, virtual field trips to museums and partnering with the public library. So we really try to expand that array of resources, not only for teachers, but for parents and families and students as well.
And as a native New Yorker, there are so many resources in the city. So bringing the city to them, that's a wonderful strategy.
Yeah.
As you look ahead to the fall, Chancellor Carranza, what are your core values that will be guiding your many decisions, and what are you going to be prioritizing?
First and foremost is health and safety of all of our students and our staff members. First and foremost, everything stems from that. So we're working very closely with epidemiologists, our public health professionals, not only in the city of New York, but the state of New York and around the country. I created a position in my cabinet, chief strategy officer, and she has become our reopening czar, if you will. And she's become quite the expert on what is happening across the country, what are other large urban districts thinking, and what are they planning on, but also around the world. We have other countries that have already come back to school, so we're taking lessons learned from them as well. So we are in the process of those plans, but first and foremost is going to be health and safety. Secondly, we know that given the social distancing, and we expect social distancing will be with us. So then how do you take the classrooms? And as a native New Yorker, you know that some of our schools are very, very close quartered. So how do you provide the appropriate social distancing requirements in schools that are already crowded? Well, then that pertains to the question about, well, then how many kids in a classroom, and what do you consider a classroom? And so how do you break up the groups of students so that you can't have them all in the same place at the same time? We've done an analysis, and we have 1,800 schools, 1.1 million students. Based on the social distancing requirements, we estimate that on any given day, assuming that we're clear to go into in-person learning, but with those restrictions still in place, we can only serve 49% of our students on any given day at the same time.
Oh.
So 51% of our students we don't have the space for. So that's just a glimpse of the kinds of complex issues that we're trying to work our way through. And also, we also know that the remote learning that we were thrust into, and I got to give a huge shout out to our teachers and our families and our students. In the span of 4 days, we pivoted the largest system in America to remote learning. And some people were out of the gate with no issues, and some folks have really struggled. But
Sure.
it's also been an opportunity in the course of the 3 months that we've been in remote learning. We've distributed over 475,000 Wi-Fi enabled devices. We have connectivity. All the internet providers have provided internet for free for all of our students. We're kind of pushing them right now to make that happen through the end of the calendar year. But we've bridged the digital gap, right? So crisis sometimes is an opportunity for cataclysm or really advanced change. So we're continuing to develop our blended learning model and making it more robust and making it more tailored to the needs of our students as well. And I think the final thing I will say in terms of what we're looking at is, over the course of these 3 months that we've been out, we've served over 22 million meals to our students and our families in New York City. If we have some kind of a blended approach, we're also very, very attuned to the fact, how are we going to feed students and still continue to feed students that may not be in-person learning at the same time? Because we also know that food insecurity is really, really a difficult issue in a large urban system.
It is. Wow. I'm just impressed and very proud, very proud. Of all of the challenges that you have, what are some of the hardest that you can think of? I mean, you just identified so many. And when you, maybe more importantly, is when you come up against these challenges, because you don't know yet all of the challenges that will come up, what's the strategy or process that you use for addressing these challenges?
Yes, I think of all of the challenges that are before us, and there are many. You're right. I think the one for me that personally keeps me up at night is understanding that remote learning just can't meet the needs of some of our most vulnerable students, students with disability, for example, our multilingual learner students. And even though we're working hard, and I know our teachers are working hard to do the best they can with our students, there's a modicum of in-person client service that is missing for the students. And my concern is not only the academic deterioration of these students, but also the social emotional deterioration.
Exactly.
They need that in-person connection. So for us, as we think about how we're coming back, and we start in September 6th is our first day. So if we get the go ahead and it's going to be okay to do in-person learning, again, health and safety is always first, then we're going to prioritize our students, our most vulnerable students first. So if we have a group of students that, let's say, just for example purposes, let's just say that given our space constraints, we have a model where a group of students will come to in-person learning school 2 days a week, and then another group will come 2 days a week, the other 2 days a week, and then the fifth day, Friday, is reserved for students that need additional time and additional supports. Well, we're going to prioritize. I would say that our most vulnerable students would be there 5 days a week, right? Because they need the most support and the most in-person. But what makes it complicated, though, is that given whatever the medical advice is at the time, we may have a good percentage of our faculty, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our principals that have underlying medical conditions that makes it unsafe for them to come to school environment without there being a vaccine. So then how do you factor in a percentage of your staff that you're not going to have anymore?
Mm-hmm.
And then there may be a percentage of students, or there may be families who's, in fact, and I'll just tell you, we're surveying our families. We've had over 200,000 responses to our survey. It's been up for a week, but we're trying to find out from families, will you feel comfortable coming back in September, even with all of the safety precautions in place? Because we're trying to get a pulse on how many of our families would not feel safe sending their kids back to in-person learning and would prefer to have a remote learning plan for them as well. But I would say more than anything, aside from the health and safety concerns, our biggest concern is really our most vulnerable students, students with disabilities, multilingual learner students, students in temporary housing, which is our term for homeless students, students in foster care. I would say those are the big four that we're really concerned about.
Mm. Well, you've had to innovate this spring in unprecedented ways, and that's going to continue. You sort of referenced this earlier. Do you see concrete opportunities to reform and improve the delivery of public education in New York City post this pandemic?
It's a great question. So I'm going to phrase it a little different. What I'm going to say is never pass up the opportunity to make the system better, especially during a crisis. So what I keep saying to my colleagues is, whenever we talk about normal, we cannot be talking about the normal prior to COVID-19, prior to the pandemic. We will never go back to that, because that normal never served all of our kids well anyway. So the new normal must be predicated upon the lessons that we've learned and what have we really built in terms of capacity. So the capacity to use technology in a very different way, not to replace a teacher, but to augment what a teacher is able to do. The ability to use technology to almost individualize the supports for students in different ways is a capacity that some teachers had in spades before the pandemic. Others never dipped a toe into that water. Well, now everyone's had to dip the whole foot in that water. So let's keep building on that capacity. The ability to conduct professional development and have meetings. You know, New York's a big place, and it can take hours to get to one place for a meeting or a professional development series. Here we've been for 3 months. We never ever thought we could do this virtually, but we've been doing it virtually. I would say those are transformative to the greater eco structure of the organization. But here are some other things. We in public education, we in the general sense, always would say, oh, attendance is so incredibly important. Attendance is important. How do you take attendance when everybody's remote? So instead of taking attendance by a body being in a chair, we now take engagement numbers. And how do we measure engagement? Because we now have the technology to know when a student has logged in, when a student has logged into a lesson, when the student has submitted. So it's the engagement that's important, not the body in the chair. That's a new concept for many people. Oh, kids have to behave or they have to get suspended out of the classroom. I keep reminding folks for the last 3 months, we haven't suspended one child in New York City. Not one. Guess what? We've had to teach them. So let's keep building on that. Oh, we have to evaluate those teachers, and it has to be tied to student performance data. Guess what? We haven't evaluated one teacher. How do you do a walkthrough in a virtual classroom? We haven't evaluated one teacher. And guess what? Kids are learning, teachers are teaching. So there are a lot of these, I think, urban myths that we've always just bought into, that it's just part of schooling, that this pandemic has required us to rethink. I think we should keep on going with that. We should keep thinking about, what does schooling really look like? Is it about turning in that paper on time, and if it's 10 minutes late, we take 50 points away? Or is it about, did you master the content knowledge? Did you master the subject knowledge? If you mastered it, may have taken you a day, it may have taken you 2 days, but if you mastered it, isn't that the goal? So I think it's really open to space for those kinds of, I think, much more enlightening conversations in public ed.
And New York City, I'm proud to say, is leading the way.
Yes,
the twin pandemics of COVID-19 and heightened racism and violence against Black and Brown people and their allies have impacted our nation and our public ed systems in ways unimaginable, as you well know. What have you learned about being a leader during this difficult time in our nation, and more specifically in our sector?
Well, you know, when I arrived in New York City as Chancellor 2.5 years ago, I did a listen and learn tour. I talked to lots of parents and students and teachers and principals and community-based organizations and activists, you name it, I talked to them. And then I published what I heard. I actually put out a document, I published what I heard. And what I heard from the community 2.5 years ago was the exact same things that people are marching in the streets about today. There's an inequitable system. There's a system in place that privileges some and does not privilege others. There are opportunities for some and not opportunities for others. There are disproportionate requirements for some and not for others. So all of the things that people are marching in the streets about now, we were talking about 2.5 years ago. And I'll tell you, I didn't have the allies like I do now, because, you know, a lot of people were very uncomfortable. What, you're the chancellor and you're talking about what? Absolutely. Because aside from the chancellor, I'm also a man of color. I'm an English language learner. So I know what that feels like, and I know what these injustices have been. So what is different now is, I do think that there's been a seismic shift. The ground has literally moved beneath our feet, where I think America, in the most general sense, but not only Black, not only Latino, not only Asian, but of all colors, religions, creeds, are recognizing, when you see a man killed under the authority of the law before your very eyes, calling for his mother.
Yes.
That is connected on such a personal level with people from across the world. So yes. I do think that as a leader, this is the opportunity again, whereas the pushback may have been, why are you talking about it? Now everybody's talking about it. So now what do we do about it?
Exactly.
For me, that's the learning moment right now. What do we actually do about it? But I will also say this. I would say there's been a three-pronged pandemic. The viral pandemic, COVID-19, the racial pandemic that we're seeing in the streets, and the third is the economic pandemic. Because in every single one of those areas, it has been the people of color, Black, Latino, Asian, poor, that have been disproportionately impacted by every single one of them. In New York City, I will tell you that in Black communities, the Latino community, Asian communities, there's been a disproportionate death rate due to COVID-19 based on a number of reasons, not the least of which is the disproportionate healthcare that was provided for these in these communities. We also know what's happened in terms of racial justice. And thirdly, the jobs that have been lost in New York City have disproportionately impacted the very same communities. So either this is a big coincidence, or perhaps there really is structural racism. Perhaps there really have been inequalities and inequities in our system. Perhaps there really has been redlining, perhaps. I think those are the kinds of conversations that we as leaders cannot be so busy keeping our jobs that we don't do our jobs. And doing our job is carrying that conversation forward with an action-oriented outcome at the end.
Mm. You know, I asked you earlier about your core values, and I think you just spoke them.
Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
no, no, I mean, what a leader has to do in these times, and not be as worried about keeping their job as doing their job. I'm going to ask one more, and then I'm going to go to the chat box. So if you have questions out there that you want to ask our chancellor, and that's how I referred to him when I was in New York, and that's how I still refer to him, please put them in the chat box. Chancellor Carranza, if you could give one sterling piece of advice to current and future leaders, what would you advise them to do?
Um, I'm not going to tell you to become a subject matter expert or a content expert or curriculum expert, although it helps. I'm not going to tell you to read a lot of leadership books about how you put together your strategic plan, although it helps. The number one piece of advice, if I could be, if I could even offer a piece of advice, would be this: you have to know who you are, and you have to know what you stand for.
Amen.
You have to know what your non-negotiables are, because that will guide everything you do, from the policies that you take on to the policies that you adopt, to the conditions that you will accept, not only for your employment, but the conditions that you will accept for the very students you're serving in whatever leadership role it is. You have to know who you are, you have to know what your values are and what you stand for, and then you keep them close. And I think of those values as a candle with a flame.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the values. And in a leadership position, there are going to be gusts of wind trying to blow out that flame and get you to do something different. But you have to guard them, because when you're true to that, I say to folks, look, I grew up playing mariachi music. I still play mariachi music. I have the
I
uniform,
know.
I have the guitar, and every city I've ever lived and worked in, as a superintendent or otherwise, there's been a Mexican restaurant. So if I get fired as chancellor, that's okay. I'm not going to starve. I can gig, right? And I can teach because I have my teaching. So don't be worried about keeping your job. Do your job. But that means I also have to be true to who I am and my
Mm-hmm.
values, my core principles,
Mm-hmm.
because that'll tell me when it's time to do something else.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Somebody in the chat is asking about how specifically you have addressed the needs of homeless students and stayed connected to the parents and communities of your most vulnerable students.
That's a great question. So just as a matter of context, 1.1 million students in New York City's Department of Education. 10%, I misspoke, 10% of all of our students are homeless. So that's over 108,000 students are homeless. Some of them in shelter, some of them in hotel rooms, some of them couch surfing, but they're all homeless. So what I did is we created 2 years ago a whole division to serve our homeless students as part of our student wellness and health division. And we have a whole division of folks that work with other city agencies in making sure that we're providing services to students in a coordinated way, and their families in a coordinated way. So rental assistance, or it could be food assistance. Us, obviously, we're connected to the social emotional learning needs, social workers, grief counselors, all of that infrastructure as well. So those people are still continuing to case manage, if you will, their caseload of students that are homeless. In addition, we've asked and given guidance, but we've asked all of our principals and teachers, as they check in on their students, to pay particular attention to students that they know are homeless, and they know, and then to let us know if they're seeing any signs. What could those signs be? For example, students are not engaging for days at a time, or their engagement is very limited. So again, we're just trying to keep a pulse on how our students are doing. I can tell you that the reason I said this keeps me up at night is because, as a vulnerable student population, many, and I talked about the disproportionate impact of COVID-19, we know for a fact that many of our students that are homeless students, students in temporary housing, have had disproportionately a greater impact due to COVID-19, or the disemployment that has happened because of COVID-19
Yes.
as well. So they are having it a little tougher than even others. So
Mm-hmm.
we're just trying to stay connected, have a pulse, and then making sure that we're working in coordination with other city agencies to make sure we're getting them the support they need.
which is wonderful. Um, can you say more about how your teachers are helping students deal with their grief, either in the loss of their friends, family, or the stability, and how teachers are addressing their own losses?
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, Tough time. We've lost about 79 of my colleagues in the Department of Education to COVID-19. And we know that teachers know somebody
mhm,
somewhere. So what we've done is put together a toolkit which has things like starter questions, questioning protocols, resources, and links to other resources that we've been curating around how to have these grief conversations. We've also created a similar but much more tailored set of resources for parents so that parents
mm,
can have those kinds of conversations with their students. In addition, we've created additional guidance and I would say curriculum is probably the wrong word, but I would say guidance documents with resource links around the racial strife that is happening right now. How do students talk about it? I was a minute late to this conversation because I just had a town hall with students in New York City, where we
wow.
had thousands of students. Where students and I, nobody else. Well, there were other people there, but the only people that spoke were students and I, and we had an opportunity to talk about and then process what they were feeling and what they were thinking, and just brilliant thoughts coming from our young people. So those are just some of the examples of what we've done, and we try to be as forward thinking and proactive as possible. And I already mentioned, as we're thinking about what will school look like when we're back in person, we're really curating a whole other set of blended learning materials and resources and links so that teachers have those resources at their fingertips as well when we transition back to in-person learning.
Mhm. Well, you have been a font of information. Is there a way, is this information curated in a place where other districts, leaders in other parts of the sector can access it? Because you're ahead of the curve. You were doing work setting up some of these processes 2 years ago that you're now using. I think that I know if I was still a superintendent, I would really be so helped by having access to some of the things that you've already developed.
Absolutely. So what we'll do is there's a number of resources already available on our district website. It's the www.schools.nyc.gov. So anyone's welcome to go on and take a look at what we've got there. And as we start really kind of finalizing more and more of these pieces, we're going to start populating them there as well. I'm a big believer that what's mine is yours because we are all in the service of students everywhere. So we're happy to share as much and everything that we have.
Well, for that, I'm personally grateful, and on behalf of all of the educational leaders and teachers and just parents and other stakeholders that have been part of this, I can't thank you. I can't thank you enough
Thank
for
you.
the work that you're doing. There are 3 key takeaways that we've heard in this brilliant quick half hour. And that includes helping address the trauma that students and families are experiencing, and having a library of social emotional resources be part of your curriculum. You spoke about that. And I think everyone loved your talking about the criticality of knowing who you are and what you stand for in times such as these, and to developing and the importance of developing strategies that will support how students show up and coming up with action-oriented solutions. And then the last is never pass up an opportunity to make the system better, especially during a crisis. Um, Chancellor Carranza, I held you in the highest esteem starting the school year off a couple of years ago. I am incredibly proud of the work that you are doing and salute you for that. And on behalf of all of those of us fortunate enough to have heard you this evening and who will hear you when this webinar is repeated, thank you so much. Prayers and well wishes go with you and all of your team and the entire New York City, go New York City, New York City Department of Education.
Thank you so much. It's a true privilege to have spent some time with everyone here and everyone out there. I just have two asks. The first is take care of yourself and your families. And the second is please take care of each other. That's the only way we're going to get through this this difficult time. Take care of yourselves and your families and take care of each other. So thank you. Thank you.
All right. God bless and be with you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar, and there will be others coming up, and we hope that you'll be able to join us for those now. You can get more information by clicking on hgsc.me/ednow. Thank you to the wonderful team that put this together. We look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Bye-bye now.